Hi everyone, this is Joe from Scarecrow Joe's Studio. Welcome back to part 3 of our paper mache bats tutorial. In the first couple of segments, we concentrated on creating the armatures for our bats. This one is pretty much finished, the one with the cardboard wings. All we have to do is attach those wings and it's going to be ready to start sculpting. And in this segment we're going to go ahead and finish that up, and we're also going to finish the armature on the other bat that's going to have the cloth wings. So that's what we're going to do coming up next, get these armatures finished and completed so that we can begin our clay work and sculpting. Pretty excited because we recently reached just a little bit over 500 subscribers to our YouTube channel. To some of you it may not seem like much, but to our little channel it means a lot to us. Thank you for everybody who has subscribed, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. But anyway, let's carry on, finish up these armatures, let's get working. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is get my cardboard wings attached to my bat body. And I'm going to do that using hot glue. So I basically have positioned them on the back of the body. And that's pretty much where I want the bat to be. I'm going to go ahead and squirt in an ample amount of hot glue in here. One wing at a time. Gonna hold that down until it sets for a minute, and then I'll go ahead and do the same thing with the other wing. Ample amount of hot glue. Position it and attach. Once that sets up, I'm gonna flip this guy over. Well, I'm going to squirt more hot glue onto the sides of the wings where it connects to the body on both sides. Then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to squirt in some more hot glue around those edges that have been glued in, just to make sure that during the claying process, when we get to the back of the bat, that those wings are going to be firmly in place and we don't have to worry about them moving around. So that seems to be on there pretty good, but for good measure, again, I'm going to come around the back and I'm going to squirt hot glue all around in here. Let that dry. But this armature is done. So as soon as that dries, this is going to be ready to start applying clay over it. My little legs that I attached here with the pieces of corrugated cardboard and I strip mache'd over, they're nice and firm. They've set up really well. And once I get clay on them, they're going to be even more solid. It's not going to weigh very much, so I'm not overly concerned about the weight and these things breaking off, because that's totally not going to happen. But for now, I'm going to set this guy aside, and then we'll move on to the next bat and creating the wings for the cloth wings on our next bat. But before I set him aside, I just want you to take a look at just the difference here. This bat body is a little bit bigger than that bat body, so his wings are going to be a bit bigger than these wings. So we'll carry on right now. I'm just going to set this aside. Okay, moving on to our next bat armature here. This one's going to have, again, the cloth wings. So you're going to need a variety of materials here to begin the armature for the cloth wings. You can either use some wire clothes hangers. You're going to need probably at least 2 wire clothes hangers if you're going to use those. Or you can use some of this bendable wire such as I have here. This is a thicker bendable wire. It is a galvanized steel wire. It can hold up to 55 pounds. This obviously is not going to be anywhere near 55 pounds when it's all said and done. It is a 16 gauge wire, and this roll happens to be 25 feet. But so I'm probably going to use this. But if you don't have this on hand, or you don't feel like going down and spending $7, which is what I did on this, I use bendable wire for a lot of different things. But, I mean, you don't have to. You can use the wire coat hanger. The wire coat hangers here are a lot thicker in comparison to my bendable wire. So they will be a little harder to manipulate and to cut. So along those lines, whether you're using the bendable wire or the coat hanger, you're going to need a good strong pair of wire cutters. And then the other thing that I like to have on hand is this little needle nose like plier tool, and that really helps to manipulate wire into place. So those are going to be a couple of things that you're going to need. You're also going to need some masking tape. This is a 1-inch masking tape, and then I also have my 2-inch masking tape that I'm going to end up using as well. But to begin this process, we're going to go ahead and figure out the size of our wings, how big we do want these wings. And before I start creating my bat wings for this guy, the cloth wings, the armature for them, I'm going back and I'm looking at some reference pictures. I don't know how well you can see that. This is a poster of common North American bats and how they look, their wing shapes, what their little feet look like, so on and so forth. Bunch of different pictures here on bats. This is a good one here. But get some good reference. Here's a good reference of a face of the bat. Here's another one. Here's a good reference of a bat in flight. So it really depends on what kind of bat and the shape of the wing that you want. I'm going to focus on something like this guy right here. Again, I don't know how well you can see that. So I'm focusing on what I'm going to create here is the bony structure. So what I'm focusing on is with the wire creating the bony structure of the wing here. You can see how his upper arms, they don't really have arms per se. It's connected to their wings. And then they have at the tips, they have these little points or claws that help them grip onto things. And then if you notice also, their wings come down and actually attach to their legs. So that's pretty much what I'm going to try to do here. So I will actually be adding a little bit of a leg on both sides here so that it will connect to the wing. But for right now, I'm going to concentrate on my wing shape and getting that all fleshed out. Alright, so looking at my, keeping my reference picture near where I'm at so I can refer back to the bat wings here. I've taken a good portion of my wire. I've kind of set my bendable wire coil in the center of my bat, and kind of determined, because I'm going to insert part of this wire in there, and I want it to go in there quite a bit to make sure it's secured good enough inside. So I've kind of determined that's about the size that I want. So that's just, he's going to have pretty good, decent wings on him. I want it to look pretty dramatic. So that's going to be the inner part or the bony structure here. And then I'm going to attach another piece of wire coming down this way. So with my wire cutters, I'm going to go ahead and snip that off. And because I want them to be about the same length, and of course because I am using this bendable wire, it's not going to be completely straight, but it doesn't have to be. If you're using the wire coat hanger, you're going to get a more, you're going to get a straighter and more accurate measurement of both sides of your wings. So about right there, I'm going to snip that. And I'm just trying this with my bendable wire right now. I don't know how this is going to turn out exactly. We will see. But I'm thinking, well, let me straighten this out a little bit. That's the, that's kind of the challenge using the bendable wire as opposed to the wire coat hanger. So we're going to go, I'm going to say right about, looking at my reference picture again, right about up in here where his shoulder area would be. So with my marker, that's where I want to insert it. I'm just going to make a little dot there. And then on the other side, to try my best to get them as even as possible. I'm thinking probably right about there. All right, and I have these are actually little sculpting tools where you can put like little pinpoints and things like that into clay. These are designed for, not specifically designed for paper mache clay. There really aren't any sculpting tools designed specifically for paper mache clay. This is for like regular clay, oil-based clay or Sculpey clay. But I'm going to use this to puncture in my little holes here. And I'm going to go ahead and insert in each hole my bendable wire. I want it in there a good amount. Let's see. That's probably good. So my ruler here to give you a reference, that's in there little under 3 inches where I have inserted that. This one's got to come out a little bit more. And I'm going to take a little bit of my hot glue here and put some hot glue around the areas where I inserted that wire. Wait for that to cool and set. And then what I'm going to do is take my masking tape and apply a good amount of masking tape in there to hold it in place temporarily. Obviously, that hot glue and the masking tape is not the only thing that's going to be holding that in there. We're going to be doing some other strip mache type work over the bony structure to build that up with some newspaper and some more masking tape. It's going to be thicker in here and kind of taper. That's the idea. So, and then of course, what's really going to hold all of this in place is going to be the paper mache clay once we get that, once we get the not the cardboard wings, once we get the cloth over this structure. So I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes to set up. Go ahead and take some masking tape here. That's just going to hold that in place or help to hold it in place a little bit more. You will eventually need some cloth for the cloth wings after we get this armature built, or the wing armature built. I have an old sheet, an old white sheet that I'm going to use that I picked up pretty cheap at a local thrift store. Any kind of cloth like that. You don't want the cloth to be too thick. Alright, I think that's going to hold that in place pretty good, at least for now, where I can manipulate that. Alright, so I've got the first pieces of wire in there, and now I want to go ahead and attach another piece of wire here on both sides. Not quite sure of the length that I'm going to need, so it's trial and error at this point. I may decide that this bendable wire doesn't work and use the metal coat hanger. Trying to make these pieces about the same size. So I'm thinking one about right there. I do want to leave a little piece of the top wire sticking out. So I'm going to start with this one here. So after some struggle there, what I did was I bent one end of it into like a little loop. And I'm going to attach it to this other piece of wire, leaving that little bit out there. And I'm going to take some masking tape and hold it into place with some masking tape temporarily right now. I think that may work. Alright, on to the next one. Same thing, I just want to bend it, make a loop. Something like that. And again, tape that little area into place. Well, they're starting to look like bat wings. And then once again, I'm just referring back to a reference picture. This one has all the bats on it. And I'm noticing that I need to put another piece of wire from these points here down. Going down this way. Attach another piece of wire coming down this way. And then maybe another wire coming this way down here. So I'm going to tackle this middle one first. I want to make it to about almost the bottom portion of the bat body here. So I'm thinking right about there, and I'm just going to use these marks here as kind of a reference point. Back to my bendable wire. Man, I sure hope this works out with this bendable wire. I might be shooting myself in the foot, but hey, you never know what's going to work until you actually try it. So again, I'm going to wrap the wire around this section here where these other two wires meet. That's going to be my point here. So giving it that much more room. And right about there, I think, should work. Cut off another length of the wire so that it's about the same size as this piece that I've just cut. Right about there. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a little loop on the ends of each one and attach them the same way on both of these points. Alright, so I've got my wing points. It's starting to get shaped out with my bendable wire. They're attached at the top ends here of each top section of the wire. Before I move on and attach another wire coming down here like I want, I'm going to create some feet. And the way I'm going to do that is by using the bendable wire as well. I'm going to cut off a couple of pieces of bendable wire so that they're about the same length. And for the legs here, I'm going to insert them pretty deep. So I'm going to make a mark like I did for these wing pieces here. I want to make a mark of where I want them to be inserted. So right about there, and then on the other side so it kind of matches. Right about there. I'm taking my little tool here and I'm going to just puncture through the strip mache. Get that one in there pretty far. Let's see how far I can get this other one in here. I think that's perfect, actually. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put some hot glue to hold it in place. And then after the hot glue cools, I'm going to stick some masking tape over that to hold it in place. Okay, so what I ended up doing here, after playing around with it off camera, I decided to go with 3 of the wing bony sections, which will represent like the bone inside the bat wings. I was debating on a 4th one here like this, hooking on to each side of the leg, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. When we get the cloth on it, I think it'll turn out just fine without this part in there. And I just think this looks a little bit more natural, looks a little better. So that's what I have. I've attached 3, they're different sizes of the bendable wire, or if you're using the metal coat hanger, same exact thing. I attached them at basically one point up here on each side, held those in place by creating a little loop for one and hooking it over this wire here on each side, and then using my masking tape to hold it in place. Got my little legs in there, or what are going to be my little legs. And now I think the next thing that I want to do, before we can get the cloth onto this bat structure, we need to fortify it and strengthen it more than just this floppy mess we've got going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my masking tape first of all, and I'm going to apply masking tape all over these wires so that none of the actual wire is showing. Once I've done that, completed that, as well as the legs, once I've completed that, I'm going to take my strips of newspaper and my paper mache paste, and I'm going to apply a thin layer of newspaper soaked in the paste or strip mache on all of these wires as well. There's going to be some areas where I'm going to bulk it up a little bit more with the strip mache. For instance, in here, probably up in here in this area a little bit more, but definitely here, this area on the other side, and then we'll go from there. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to take my masking tape and just start rolling my masking tape around all of these wires. I'm just going to show you what I'm doing to start with. I don't think you guys need to sit here and watch me for the next, I don't know, 15 minutes or so applying masking tape to all of these wires. The reason that I'm applying the masking tape, in case you were wondering, is because the strip mache will have a hard time adhering to the metal, but not to masking tape. So that's why, that's the purpose of wrapping the wires in masking tape first. Alright, so I have painstakingly wrapped all of my wire with my duct tape, and while I was doing it, I thought it would have been a heck of a lot easier to wrap each individual piece before connecting them. So if you are following along, that's what I recommend. Before you connect these pieces, take the time to wrap them individually. The other thing that I did, and I don't know if you can tell or not, but on his legs, at the very ends, I have bent up those wires a tad to give, eventually it'll have the illusion of little feet for him. Alright, so I have my, a good batch of paper mache paste mixed up. I've got my newspaper strips, and I have some sheets of newspaper. I'm going to use these sheets of newspaper before I start strip machining to bulk up some of these areas here. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I know I want to bulk up right around here in the shoulder area. And again, just wrapping with my masking tape. Bats don't have very large arm structures to them. They are kind of skinny. So I'm not going to bulk up too much. I just want to give it a bit of meatiness in certain areas. About like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the other side the same way. Taking a few strips of newspaper. Really want to wrap it really good around where it meets, where the shoulder meets the wire armature here. Alright, something like that. That'll give me a bit of a head start on strip machining these wires. Alright, just to make it easier on myself, I transferred some of my paper mache paste in a smaller bowl. And I also cut down my longer strips of newspaper into smaller strips here. And I'm just going to show you what I'm doing in the beginning here. And as you can see, I have turned I've turned the bat upside down so that I can easily reach these wires here. And I'm basically doing the same thing that I did with the masking tape. I'm soaking my newspaper strips in the paste and applying it around all of these masking taped over wires. So that's what I'm going to do. You don't need to sit and watch me do this for however long it's going to take me. And depending on how it kind of feels after I'm done, I may apply even a second layer of the newspaper strips over, just to make sure that I have a nice solid armature. We'll see. Alright, so as you can see, I have finished up strip machining over these wires that I had applied some masking tape to. It's kind of a soggy mess right now. I paid particular attention to the joints, so I applied a lot of strip mache around these two areas here, and where his little legs are connected, and then in these areas up here. This should dry pretty solid. If it does not dry as solid as I want it to, then I will probably go in and apply paper mache clay over these areas really lightly. But for now, this is going to be done because I can't maneuver it until it is completely dry. So, as you can see, I have strip mached it over a piece of cardboard here. It just makes the cleanup process a little easier. And then it actually, I can transport it outside. I'm going to go take this whole thing outside and let it sit in the sun all day so it'll dry nice and solid. But that's what I recommend. If you're going to do this, get a piece of cardboard or something like that you could easily transport it, pick it up and transport it, because you don't want to keep maneuvering this. It's just going to loosen everything up. So that's where I'm at right now, and that's probably going to wrap this portion of the video. Alright, so that's a wrap for part 3 on building the armature. We're pretty much in the home stretch for that. As soon as those other wing structures for the cloth wings dry completely, then in the next segment coming up, we'll be able to actually apply the cloth for those wings. And then also, because this armature here with the cardboard wings is completely finished, we'll start sculpting this guy in the next segment, which will be part 4 of our paper mache bat tutorial. Now I will tell you that the armature build for the bat with the cardboard wings is a lot easier to do than the bat that's going to have the cloth wings. It's much more tedious process to build the wire armature for the cloth wings. But if you're up to the challenge, go ahead and do it. But for now, I thank you for watching, and we will catch you in the next one, part 4.